Welcome to part 21 of Woe to America, Woe to the Nations, and Woe to Babylon. And we're still looking at the Trumpinator and his history currently. Because there is a lot of things that people don't know and they don't care about. But certainly if somebody's going to govern over you, you should certainly know something about them. This is August the 13th, 2024 by man's calendar. And I myself never heard of anything yesterday going on that would say this is God showing out to confirm that it was the 9th of Av. The moon was not even right for it to be the 9th of Av. I noticed things. But, anyway, I'm going to jump back into the video. I really want people to see truth about what's going on in the world. I want them to understand how the beast system has been setting up for a long time to put up their one man.
Most important commodity, himself. It was right around this time that he made his debut in another high-profile local institution, the New York Times. The Times embodied the elite establishment that, decades later, Trump would build a political career upon opposing. But in the early 1970s, he was anxious for their attention and approval. The first time the New York Times mentioned Donald Trump, it wasn't for a good reason. The headline said it all. Major landlord accused of anti-black bias in city. The story concerned a Department of Justice lawsuit filed against Donald Trump and his father, which alleged that the Trump organization discriminated against African Americans. Even for someone who believed all publicity was good publicity, it was tough reading. Most of the lawyers Trump talked to urged him to settle, but that just wasn't who he was. Trump met Roy Cohn at a swanky Manhattan nightclub in the early 1970s. Trump was complaining to anyone who'd listen that he couldn't find a lawyer who believed he could win the discrimination lawsuit. Cohn offered his services. He filed a $100 million countersuit against the Department of Justice. Although it was unsuccessful, the final settlement ultimately allowed the Trump organization to get away without admitting any wrongdoing. It was a win for Trump, and a lesson he'd carry with him for the rest of his life. Never admit your mistakes.
Never admit your
was Donald
mistakes.
Trump's lawyer for 15 years.
Now, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. Or I did, rather. But anyways, never admit your mistakes is what he learned. That seems to be how the beast operates. He convinced Adam and Eve not to admit theirs too, didn't he? I suggest you don't listen to the beast and you come to the Lord repenting. This is not how you get forgiveness. You don't get forgiveness by trying to hide what you've done. If you try to cover your sin yourself, God will expose it. But if you come to God and confess to Him your sin, He will cover it. But you can't come to Him saying, God, they did it, they did it, they did it. You have to come to God saying, Lord, I did this. Please forgive me. I didn't know it was wrong. But if you knew it was wrong, you can't do that because that would be a lie. So, And if you know it's wrong, why are you doing it? When you know something is wrong, you shouldn't be doing it. That shows that you choose to put sin before God. That shows that you are demonic. There is a lot of demonic stuff going on in the world today. Look around. These evil spirits are everywhere. Because Satan has worked hard at convincing you that this is mental illness and so you give it a pill. Instead of that it's a demon that you could get rid of and that it could be cast out, you give it a pill to cure mental illness. And that doesn't do anything to a demon. That doesn't change the fact that it's there. That doesn't take it away. It's the name of Jesus that changes everything. It's not just his name, but his presence. You have to believe that he is, and that he's going to rescue you in order to be rescued by him. If you're drowning in the ocean, and I throw you a life preserver, if you don't grab onto the preserver, it's not going to save your life. If you are burning in a fire, and I try to extinguish you, but you run from the extinguisher, you're not going to be put out. You're going to stay burning. Use some wisdom here, people.
This is a picture of Donald and me in which he says, Roy is my greatest friend.
Look at Babylon.
Trump soon set his sights on something that could make his career. The old Penn Central Railroad had gone broke a few years earlier and left behind 3 prime real estate assets, the Commodore Hotel and 2 rail yards on New York's west side. The rail yards were the largest undeveloped tracts of land left in Manhattan. If Trump could get his hands on those assets, he'd prove to everyone, including his father, that he could succeed as a developer in his own right. He knew that if he played his cards right, he had a chance. He wined and dined the development agency's lead official. He held press conferences where he outlined his vision for the site. And thanks to his father's political connections, he met face-to-face with the mayor. After pulling strings for weeks, Trump got what he wanted, the right to develop the sites. Trump turned the Commodore into the Grand Hyatt.
Do you see the arrogance? Do you see the pride? Do you see the vainness that has been there the whole time? He has not changed, except for to get worse. Remember, Judas was a thief from the beginning, wanting to be somebody, wanting to make a name for yourself. Look at what it gets you. It leaves you wide open to that Antichrist spirit, for the devil to come into you and to drag you away from the Lord and make you one of the hellions, one of hell's angels. But being selfless and living for Jesus, that's worth your time.
The Grand Hyatt held its grand opening today.
Probably the most successful hotel, one of them in the country, we feel.
He knew that just winning the development rights wasn't enough. It wasn't going to silence his critics, who said he was only in that position because of his father's money and connections. And it wasn't enough to satisfy his own ambitions.
And during this time, But he was going after his own ambitions. How much glory and how much time has he given to Jesus? I don't recall any. That is not music. That is simply an alarm. Just simply an alarm, not music.
He truly wanted to be the king of New York real estate. He had to build. And not just anything, something big. So Trump swung for the fences. He promised to build 20,000 apartments on the site, more than his father had built in his entire career.
All along from 72nd all the way down to 59th, we're going to have magnificent marinas, shopping, restaurants, everything all over the Hudson River.
The local community hated the idea. They thought the proposal just didn't fit with the character of the neighborhood, and they were politically influential enough to block the development. Trump raged. But there wasn't much he could do. Full-scale attack wouldn't work. The situation required deft diplomacy that Trump just didn't have in his toolkit. So when the option came up in 1979, he had no choice but to let it lapse. It was the biggest and most bitter disappointment of his career to date. But in Trump's mind, defeat was only ever temporary. So he made a vow that next time he wouldn't let it slip out of his grasp. In the meantime, he had other things occupying his mind.
I never thought that the shirt I wore to school once...
Things occupying his mind.
Sorry about the commercials.
Ivana Marie Zelnikova was a tall, striking blonde with an exotic backstory. A competitive skier and child actor, she married a childhood friend so she could use his Austrian citizenship to escape the Eastern Bloc. After they divorced, she moved to Canada, where she met Trump. A few months after they started dating, they got married at a church on Fifth Avenue on April 9th, 1977. Their first son, Don Jr., was born about 9 months later. Fifth Avenue wasn't just home to the church where Donald Trump got married. He also wanted it to be the new headquarters of the Trump Organization. Trump had dreamed of building a tower on Fifth Avenue since he was a kid. To him, it represented the peak of glamour and power. The site he wanted was occupied by a luxury department store. In order to press his case, he kept calling and calling.
Strength and power. That's what he wanted. Strength and power. And he dreamed of building a tower. Who does that? Who dreams of building a tower when the Bible speaks against such things?
Calling the parent company asking if they were interested
Perhaps
in selling
the
the
king
site.
of Babylon?
They thought he was joking. But he was serious, and he wasn't going to give up. Finally, after a couple years, the parent company's new chairman, who was looking to pay down some debts, said yes.
Bonwitz is being sold to Donald Trump.
Trump secured the site, but that was only half the battle. He still had to persuade the approval committee, which was made up of the same sorts of people who'd blocked his plans for the rail yards just a couple years earlier. Trump needed a different approach. So this time, instead of aggression, he pointed to the fact that reputable architects liked his plan design. Not everyone was persuaded. The media class hated it. The construction of Trump Tower marked another big step in the journey from Donald to Trump.
This is the greatest skyline in the world, so this is a great addition to New York skyline.
The completion of the tallest concrete building.
And it marked the beginning of what appointment of his career to date. But in Trump's mind, defeat was only ever temporary. So he made a vow that next time he wouldn't let it slip out of his grasp. In the meantime, he had other things occupying his mind.
I wanted to go back to see something real quick.
Ivana Marie Zelnikova was a tall, striking blonde with an exotic backstory. A competitive skier and child actor, she married a childhood friend so she could use his Austrian citizenship to escape the Eastern Bloc. After they divorced, she moved to Canada, where she met Trump. A few months after they started dating, they got married at a church on Fifth Avenue on April 9th, 1977. Their first son, Don Jr., was born about 9 months later. Fifth Avenue wasn't just home to the church where Donald Trump got married. He also wanted it to be the new headquarters of the Trump Organization. Trump had dreamed of building a tower on Fifth Avenue since he was a kid. To him, it represented the peak of glamour and power. The site he wanted was occupied by a luxury department store. In order to press his case, he kept calling and calling the parent company asking if they were interested in selling the site. They thought he was joking. But he was serious, and he wasn't going to give up. Finally, after a couple years, the parent company's new chairman, who was looking to pay down some debts, said yes.
Bonwitz is being sold to Donald Trump.
Trump secured the site, but that was only half the battle. He still had to persuade the approval committee, which was made up of the same sorts of people who'd blocked his plans for the rail yards just a couple years.
Okay. I can't get back into the part just yet, but I'll see you in the next part, and I will get back into the part I want to point out. See you there.